human population is constantly changing, evolving, adapting. And as these things are occurring, we see changes in nations, families, cultures, and much more. The future of the human population is a controversial topic as it allows for lots of debate. Using data from previous years, we were able to build an educated guess on the direction of the human population. In collecting this data, we first stopped at Walmart. Perfect. Awesome. So in the 1900s, what would you say the population was?
Of America?
Of the world, the globe.
The world. In 19 America.
In the 1900s.
In the 1900s, population of the planet.
Mm-hmm.
Jeez. 1 trillion?
2 billion?
It was a lot of people.
5 billion?
Like 7.5 billion.
As of 2022, what would you say the population is?
I have no idea.
That's 6?
6? 6 people or?
6 trillion.
7.8 to 7.9 billion.
7 point something, 8 billion, I think.
It's around 6 billion.
And what is the cause of this population boom?
I really don't think it would be a population boom because I'm quite aware that there is a repopulation problem on this planet.
More people having babies.
Sex?
More people are having more kids, and then those kids are having more kids.
Now that our interviews were concluded and we gathered all our data, it was time to go home and recap. In the 1900s, the human population stood at about 2 billion. As of now, the human population stands at about 8 billion. The average annual growth rate from the 1900s to present day is 3.16%. But what caused this increase in population? A combination of factors contributed to this. A few are higher birth rates and lower mortality rates, more advanced medicine and technology, longer life expectancy, development of nations, and when talking about a specific region, population can also decrease from immigration and increase from immigration. Let's look at how nations differ in richness and poorness. When talking about richness, we are not talking about wealth in terms of money. So then what are we talking about? Higher life expectancies, advanced medicine, advanced technology, processed foods, potable drinking water, industrial advances, and transportation by car. Now that we know characteristics of rich nations, let's look at poor nations. High birth rate, high mortality rate, transportation by foot, no access to drinkable water, and inadequate grain. Roughly 20% of the world's nations would be considered poor, and 20% would be considered rich, leaving 60% in the middle. As we look at poor nations, we see they have a higher average family size, while rich nations, we see the opposite. You can expect to see 6 to 7 people in an average home in a poor nation, while in a rich nation, you'll see on an average 3. Using this data, we are shown how different nations differ depending on the stage of the nation. As we go from stage 1, the primal stage, we notice that birth rates and death rates are an ultimate high, while total population is at an ultimate low. Moving the graphs from left to right, we see a change, a curve. As population increases, both death and birth rates decrease, until we get to stage 5, where we start to see high population, low death rates, lower birth rates, meaning high life expectancy, advanced nations, and overall more sufficient growth.
In order to better understand the environmental and social impacts of growing population, specifically in Medina County, I turned to Aaron Sable to discuss what this looks like in the school system. We talked about things such as growing population, where it is located in the district, how that affects schools and the community, and what could be done to work with those changes to develop the best community possible.
Why we're looking at redistricting right now, because we're seeing changes in the population in the community. So if you look at Medina City Schools and the surrounding communities, and you look at our school district, you look at where all the new development is, it's on the outside ring of the city towards the township, and it's where the land is for all the new homes to be built. So we're seeing increased population towards the outside of the city. So an overcrowding of the schools like Northrop and Waite, the newer buildings in the district, where the schools on the inner ring of the school district, which are the older communities, We're seeing a decrease in the student population, and that's because students are aging out of the schools, the families aren't moving, they're staying there, and there's no longer students to go there. So it's causing a shift in our student population in the school district. What we are seeing, though, in addition to a shift in the population, is we're seeing the community become more diverse. So more social, economically, and racially diverse than it's ever been before, and we're seeing that growing. And that's another thing that we're looking at with our redistricting as well, is ways we can develop more equity amongst all our schools.
What would that look like? How would that create changes?
Well, that's a good question as well. Well, I think it's occurring because of more affordable housing in Medina, and also because our schools are great. So people are moving out here because they want their children to have great opportunities in our school system. In terms of developing more equity, I think it's looking at the boundaries of where our students are attending at different schools, and trying to develop lines that make sense, that create more diversity in all of our buildings. When you're talking about graduation rates, it's always more of a challenge for a larger district, but it really has more to do with social economics. Wealthier districts versus poorer districts. You know, when you look at populations and you look at population growth, the population booms, you know, it's really looking at the resources that are available. And like you asked about, well, what would happen if there was big growth in the district? Well, the concern is we're going to run out of resources. We actually, just a few years ago, increased our ESL staffing because of the increase in students that speak English as a second language. For it to happen, we would need the community to pass a bond issue.
What would that take? Like, why wouldn't they, or why would they be in support of redistricting?
Well, I think the biggest concern is people love their elementary buildings, their community schools. So the idea of their children having to maybe attend a different elementary school, I think, is very scary, and I understand that. That's not just for our parents, but that's for our staff and students too. You know, if you've been a teacher in a building for 20 years and all of a sudden might be asked to go teach in another building, or your brother or sister went through Roots and now you're going to go through Claggett. You know, anytime there's major change like that, that can be a challenging adjustment. So I think it's really about communicating why we're looking at those changes and how those changes really ultimately benefit students as well as the school district. I think in terms of human population, I think what your generation does is extremely important. It really always is a generational thing. I think it's good that you're having these kind of conversations in your classes, because you do see a shift in how people interact with each other, how you utilize resources, and I think taking leadership opportunities and taking time in school to think about what that means to you is important.
While me and Mr. Sable primarily focused on redistricting due to population dynamics, the ideas we talked about here can be applied to population changes on any scale. There are many dynamics, such as housing availability, diverse communities, and available resources that affect the social and environmental aspects of population. On top of that, there are many ways to adapt to these changes and create the best communities possible.
So in this section, we are going to be talking about factors influencing family size. Family size in the US has been steadily declining for many decades now because couples are having less kids than they used to. There are many different factors that could be causing this decline. I conducted a survey where I asked people to pick 3 factors that they believed were the most influential on family size in 2022. In the survey, the respondents were able to pick from some of the most influential factors, and there was also an other option where they could type their own response. I got 68 responses total, and the results of the survey are displayed here. 25% of people thought that religion was one of the most influential factors on family size. People of different religions have varying beliefs about the number of children they should have and at what point in their life they should have children. Right underneath religion, we have culture, which was chosen as one of the most influential factors by 47% of people. This is a map showing the average household size across the world, and as you can see, countries in Africa and the Middle East tend to have more people per household than places like Europe and Northern America. Each region of the world has a different culture and different cultural norms that can affect family size. Next, we have age, which was chosen 44% of the time. Fertility decreases with age, particularly after the age of 35. This can have a great influence on when couples decide to have kids and how many kids they have. Next is employment status, which was the most frequently chosen response at 54%. The employment status of the parents affects the amount of income and financial stability of a family, which is crucial to a family's well-being. Having and raising children is extremely expensive and requires reliable and steady income. For example, raising a child to the age of 18 in America will cost parents an average of $230,000. Occupation also influences family size and was chosen about 34% of the time by respondents. The type of occupation a person has can affect things like their income as well as the amount of time they have available to take care of a child. Next, we have socioeconomic status, which was chosen by respondents about 49% of the time. This is a graph showing how socioeconomic status can affect family size. As you can see, people who are upper class with a higher income tend to have a smaller family size, while people who are lower class or middle class tend to have a larger family size. Government policies can also influence family size, and this response was chosen about 12% of the time by people. One example of government policies affecting family size was the one-child rule in China. This graph shows the fertility rate in China, and as you can see, around 1980, the government formally implemented the one-child policy. Therefore, the fertility rate began to decline because people were having less children than before. Next on the list, we have educational status, which was chosen about 24% of the time by respondents. On average, people with a higher level of education, like a bachelor's or master's degree, tend to have less kids than people who have only obtained a lower education, like a high school degree. The last 2 factors were written by respondents, and these were personal commitments and money. Money ties in with employment status and socioeconomic status, but personal commitment and personal relationships can also affect family size. Now that we're done talking about factors that influence family size, we're going to move on to the absence of development. The absence of development in countries. Development refers to a country working their way up the ladder of economic performance, living standards, sustainability, and equality. Countries with an effective rate of industrialization and income are known as developed countries. One example of a highly developed country is our own country, the United States. On the other hand, countries with slow rates of industrialization and low income are known as developing countries. Developing countries often have an absence of development, which means that they are developing extremely slow or seemingly not at all. Approximately 17% of the world population is considered developed, and the other 83% of the population is still developing. That means that less than 2 in 10 people live in developed parts of the world. In the year 1971, the United Nations recognized least developed countries as a category for countries at a severe developmental disadvantage.
There are 3 categories used to determine if a country has low development. These criteria include per capita income, which is gross national income, human assets, which are things like health, school enrollment, and literacy rates, and economic vulnerability, which is an economy's ability to absorb shocks and recessions and bounce back. Some of the least developed countries with an absence of development are located in Africa. For example, countries like Sudan and Zambia. In these countries where there is an absence of development, there is often inadequate technology, high levels of poverty, low per capita income, lack of a capital, high population and birth rate, and large unemployment rates. Now that we've talked about the absence of development in developing countries, onto the new direction of development.
This is Penelope. She is going to be our first model. She is representing the most developed of countries. Penelope has access to fridge water and ice cubes. While our model enjoys an ice cube, I'm going to show you all Penelope has access to. Penelope clearly has an education. She has clothes. She has lots of toys and brain activities. She has her medicine and her probiotics. There are her treats. She has a safe shelter, her bean bag, and her little pumpkin toy. As you can see, she has lots of blankets, so she is always warm. Here is her leash. She gets lots of walks. Because of Penelope's proper medical access and education, she has been fixed, so she will not be constantly having puppies, or ever. That is why she is the most developed of the countries. This is Tucker. He represents the middle of population in countries. As you can see, we've taken away a few things, but Tucker still has access to a little bit of education, medical access, and shelter. He has his clothing, his leash, a bed, enrichment activities, and toys. In this case, Tucker had a baby before he got fixed. This is Windsor. He represents the most populated countries. As you can see, he has the least amount of things. His access is very limited. He has no access to medical care or an education. Because of this, he has to wear a diaper because he has bladder control issues. Because of his lack of medical care, he has many children with many different mothers. This is why he represents the countries with the highest population.
Overpopulation solutions: access to contraception, family planning, better education, better healthcare. Why longer life expectancies? Economic advances, improved education, better healthcare, access to shelter. Countries' population. The countries that have a high population, in red, are less developed and have less resources than the countries with lower populations, in green. Because of the lack of resources and new developments, more people are getting pregnant on accident and contributing to the constant rising population growth. My diagram represents different populations in different countries.
Okay, I'm in Walmart too, looking for people to interview about the ethics of population control. Do you think population control is ethical?
No, I think everybody should have their own choice.
No.
Not really. Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay.
I'd rather for us to control it instead of letting so many people be in the world and we can't take care of them.
So can you think of any benefits of population control?
You gotta take better decisions. I think it starts there.
None at all.
No, I can't.
No. Not really.
So in China, families were only allowed to have one kid from 1980 to 2015. Do you think there were any benefits to this, or this was ethical and unethical?
It's a benefit in one way, but it also is stop families from having more family and keeping their legacy going on.
Well, I don't know much about it, but I do know they kept it just because they were probably running out of like options and stuff.
Resources,
but
yeah.
Resources and all that. But no, I don't really think it's that ethical.
Population ethics is the study of the ethical problems that arise when world's actions affect birth rates of the present and future. Population control can be policies that attempt to limit the population numbers in situations where your country's resources have been stretched thin. Examples of population control include family planning, voluntary abortions, and contraceptives like birth control. Going back to the interviews, the majority of people said no, population control is not ethical. After asking if the population ban in China from 1980 to 2015 was ethical or necessary, only one person gave me a relevant answer as to why they might have needed this. She explained that the only reason they kept this ban was because they were probably running out of options and resources. Going back to the beginning, Ireland discussed the population explosion and its cause, explaining that growth of the human population from the 1900s till present day and the difference in growth in rich and poor nations. Marina's main point explained that there are many different factors that influence family size. The top factors people choose when surveyed were culture, employment status, and socioeconomic status. Absence of development mostly occurs in developing countries and causes extremely low rates of industrialization and low national income. Jillian talked with Aaron Sable about dynamics of population growth and what effects have come from population growth and shifts in Medina City School District. Celeste's section on New Direction and Development showed the differences between more developed countries and less developed countries, and ideas on population control. My section discussed the ethics on population control, proving through random interviews that this was not ethical. The main reason a country would feel the need to do this is because they are running out of resources.